Hartford historian Trudy Johnson Merrill could write a book about the day Senator John F. Kennedy came to Hartford in 1960 to campaign for President of the United States. Oh, sure, Connecticut's capital city had seen potential presidential candidates before, but not in North Hartford.
At the corner of Pavilion and Main Street, there was a gas station, Tom Parrish service station. And he and Sonny Fredericks owned that station in that corner. In fact, today it's called Tom Parrish Corner. And we made the request that he stop there. If our vote was essential to the campaign. And so, after a lot of discussion, it was decided that Jack Kennedy, from the airport, Bradley Field, his first stop would be at the corner of Pavilion and Main before he went downtown.
At Main and Pavilion, there was a platform with red, white, and blue bunting. There were inspirational words, but the faces in the crowd looked very different this time.
He came to us. He spoke to all of us in the same voice, with the same words. He said the same words he said all over. You see, that's one thing we'd begun to look for. There are sometimes different nuances you speak to when you're speaking to a different ethnic group because of their personal interest in securing some kind of political foothold. But basically, his speech hinged upon the same basic principles we all hear, that we all have certain rights. And I sat there thinking sometimes that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the Constitution should have given me all my rights, but it didn't.
An America with too many slums, with too few schools, and too late to the moon and outer space. These are the real issues which should decide this campaign.
And so he spoke. He recognized that the meanings that should have been were not, and that there were still battles to be fought. And that recognition I think came from the fact that you can't legislate hearts.
We will lead on human rights and civil rights, and we will close Guantanamo.
Merrill says the only person to come close to this level of inspiration is Barack Obama.
I never dreamed in my lifetime I would see a black man become president of the United States of America. I never dreamed that.
Merrill believes a defining moment in Hartford history helped pave the way for a defining moment in America's history.
Good morning. First of all, I want to congratulate each and every one of you contestants. All of you were winners before you actually came upon the stage.
Thurman Milner talks to students at the school that now bears his name, the Milner Core Knowledge Academy. As the first elected black mayor of Hartford and of New England, he's living history to these kids, but he wants them to know that they are the future.
For me, education is critical for these students. These kids live in one of the most depressed areas of our city. Most of them come from single-parent homes, similar to mine. I came from a family on welfare here in the city of Hartford.
Parallel.
Parallel. P-A-R-A-L-L-E-L.
Parallel. Parallel.
Excellent job, that is correct.
So I tell these kids, I said, you know, just because you're in poverty, don't let poverty stay within you. And my mother taught us that. She said, we may have to be on welfare, but don't let that impact who you can be and what you want to be. And
That's why when Milner was elected mayor in 1981, he said the honor was not for him, but for his mother.
because she was born and raised in the city of Hartford at a time when she worked in West Hartford as domestic and could not even eat in the kitchen where she scrubbed the floors.
Milner's humble beginnings are rooted in slavery.
My ancestors were slaves in Middletown, Connecticut. And one of the things that most people understand that we did have slaves in New England.
Milner grew up in a segregated Hartford when coal and wood was delivered by horse and buggy. People traveled by trolley and they marched for civil rights. That's how Milner met the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Andrew Young, and the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who later endorsed Milner when he ran for mayor.
When I elected mayor and I came to City Hall, the mayor's office was locked. Even the custodian didn't have the key. And we had to get a locksmith to come in and open the door. Then when I went into the mayor's office, every piece of paper, every file, everything that was in the office had been removed.
That wasn't the only challenge. Being the mayor of a smaller city is a big responsibility.
Before becoming mayor, I worked in New York City as a deputy commissioner of community development. And one of the things I found about a mayor in New York City, if you see him once a year, you're glad to see him. But here in the city of Hartford, the mayor is expected to be everywhere.
With every obstacle, he remembered Dr. King's message.
His main message was that within everyone there is dignity and respect, and there's also everyone has a gift to give.
So what is Milner's gift? Author? Activist? Mayor?
But I think just giving back of some of what was given to me.
As Milner reflects upon Hartford's 375th anniversary, he believes his election is just one defining moment. The next chapter of resurgence is about to be written by the changemakers of the future.
Young people looking forward to coming back to become teachers, to become lawyers, to become doctors, not in some faraway land, but right here in the city of Hartford.
Retired Hartford Fire Chief Charles Till Sr. is a student of history. As he walks the path of the memorial dedicated to the 1944 Hartford Circus Fire, he puts into perspective the timeline of this tragic event and how it is forever etched into the hearts and minds of Hartford residents.
We just can't believe there was a circus fire that took the lives of 168 people, including 100 children.
Till first learned about the circus fire when he was a child. His grandmother told him the story and it has stayed with him ever since.
When she got finished telling me about it, I was a changed person. It was the first time I came to realize that children don't always grow up and become old. Sometimes they die long before. That's why this is so important to me.
You can literally walk the timeline of the tragedy on July 6, 1944 that forever connects the circus and the city. Investigators later determined the cause to be arson, so the hope is that there are lessons learned in regards to safety. Everything from connecting chairs to prevent tripping and stampedes to not using flammable materials.
Whenever you have a situation where there's a fire hazard of this magnitude, firefighters are positioned at the scene just in case there is an incident of this type, because of course when you have a situation like the circus tent that was here, it was waterproofed with paraffin wax and the wax was thinned with gasoline. So of course if there was a fire, it was going to burn very rapidly.
However, the most important lesson is to remember the grief and horror so that history will not repeat itself. This memorial was created, built and finally dedicated in 2005 to do just that.
I'm out here every week, and the overall effect is always the same. It comforts me to know that the children of the Fred D. Wish School treat this place with great respect. Whenever I see them, if they're in this area, they're very quiet. You'll see that the place is spotless. They keep it clean. I remember when we were building it, they had posters inside the school saying, you know, who's digging in our backyard? They've been taught about what transpired here. And I think what it does is it helps us to appreciate one another. I think this day is important because it makes us realize, as sad as it may be, that there's not always tomorrow to get along with someone, because today could be the last day you see them. You might lose them at a circus.
If you think Almirada knows everyone on Franklin Avenue, you're probably right. He's a former councilman and now serves as the president of the Franklin Avenue Merchant Association. But as he walks through the South End, he also travels down memory lane of growing up on Front Street.
Everything was very down to earth. I lived at 148 Temple Street. Next door there was an upholstery place. They did couches, and Temple Glass was there. In the backyard it used to be like 3-car garage. Everything was so like you used to see a policeman used to know everyone that lived on Temple Street or Front Street, and at night they didn't have to be around. Everything was and people were outside, and little kids used to play kickball right in the street or in a narrow alleyway. So that's what I remember.
Mr. Murata was just a child when the great floods of 1936 and 1938 hit Hartford, forever changing the people's lives along the Connecticut River. But he recalls a strong neighborhood bond being the key reason they survived these tragedies.
I don't remember too much about 34, but 38, I got to understand a little bit. People, you know, some of them say, hey, I'm not going to put up with this and leave. But a lot of them had like a network saying, this is my house. This is where my kids were born. I want to live here. Some of them had businesses, and the business people at that time, Front Street did not live somewhere else. Most of them lived right where their business was, where we were living, because people really liked each other and wanted to live there and try to help each other out. And like you say, openness, sharing their food and their meals together.
As a child, he remembers the floodwaters being so high that rowboats were being used down city streets instead of cars. We
lived on the second floor. It would flood to the bottom of the floor. So they used to have to come early with a little rowboat and pick us up, take us up towards Market Street, and then they had a vehicle take us to Bedford Street or Albany Avenue to be safe for a few days while the floodwaters came up. And that was stopped once they did the dike in the system. After they started putting up the dikes in the 40s, a lot of people start fixing up some of the houses before they did their revitalization and made Constitution Plaza.
The mighty Connecticut River was tamed over the years by Hartford's flood control system, the construction of the Constitution Plaza, and the riverfront recapture. Now the river is a scenic view, a playground, and once again an alluring magnet for people.
Young people, the new generation, say I want to be downtown and I want to socialize downtown. So that's coming back. And we're saying that maybe the stores and shops will come back, because once you have people, there's safety in numbers, but once you have people living there, that makes, like New York City and Boston, makes your own neighborhood solid.
So as Hartford celebrates its 375th anniversary, residents like Almirada see the Great Floods as a defining moment in the city's history that has turned out to be a lesson for rebuilding a future as well.
I think that I learned us a good lesson that life will have its interferences, not perfect.
As only the second Latino mayor of Hartford, Mayor Pedro Segarra credits those who paved the way for his success. One notable standout, Maria Sanchez Colon.
And she was very proud to be a Puerto Rican. She was very humble about being Puerto Rican. So I think I relate to her humility, that you could accomplish things politically, but yet maintain a certain humility. She was very humble. She had a very small business that she operated, from which she supported herself. She definitely wasn't in politics for any type of personal gain. I think she was in it because she really loved the children and she wanted to have a better future for the young people.
Maria Sanchez Colon arrived in Hartford in 1954, founded the Puerto Rican Parade Committee 10 years later, and in 1973 became the first Puerto Rican elected to public office in Hartford when she successfully ran for a seat on the Board of Education. Her passion for education and for the children of Hartford resonated with a young Pedro Segarra who took classes with her at what was then Greater Hartford Community College.
She highly encouraged the young people at the college, very encouraging in terms of us pursuing school and also pursuing political careers. She understood that education was key, and it's, you know, for those of us who advocate for more education for our children, I think that the inspiring force was Maria.
Small in stature, Maria Sanchez Colon became a giant of social justice. She had her little storefront on Albany Avenue, and that storefront was the center of community life. People would come to her for advice, especially in times of inaction and turmoil, whether it was the riots, bilingual education, or Spanish-speaking Mass in a Catholic church in Hartford. Maria was part of that.
She spoke softly but carried a big stick.
And she made sure she spoke up for those who felt they were not being heard. Her memory and her achievements are kept alive in many ways, including an annual banquet held in her honor, and a school is named after her. And now there is Maria C. Sanchez Way at the corner where her little storefront once stood. For Mayor Segarra,
the best award that I've earned is having met her, having been encouraged by her.
In 1988, Sanchez became the first Puerto Rican woman to be elected to the Connecticut General Assembly. As Hartford celebrates its 375th anniversary, Mayor Segarra believes that moment was the culmination of all of her achievements.
It was done within her own right. You know, she was elected to office. It wasn't that it was given to her. She fought for her rightful place in political world. As a Puerto Rican woman, it's an accomplishment in its own right within her community, because, you know, Puerto Rican males tended to be a little bit controlling. So for her to be a woman and be able to reach that position also speaks to her determination.
Hartford's history is etched in stone. In 1636, founder Samuel Stone and the Reverend Thomas Hooker renamed the House of Hope settlement town of Sauquoig to Hartford after Hartford, England. Historian Bill Foudy says that was a very common occurrence.
You often name things after what you were familiar with.
A map carved into Hartford's municipal building shows how streets were named after the famous people of the time, a practice and tradition that continues to this day. Now that one of America's oldest cities is celebrating its 375th anniversary, it's also a good time to remember that in 1857, two of our early residents, A.K. Hawks and H.D. Rice, later founded Hartford, Kansas, providing hope and opportunity in the new frontier of that time.
I'm like, I'm from Hartford. They're like, Connecticut? I'm like, no, Kansas. They're like, where's that? I'm like, in between Emporia and East Rapids. And they're like, we still don't know where you're talking about.
Hartford, Kansas, population today, 500. Home to haystack-filled pastures, plenty of farms, and open space as far as the eye can see. That's a little different from Connecticut's capital city. Population 125,000, tall towers, a revitalized riverfront, and historic park space. But the two Hartfords have several things in common. A high school named after the city, similar street names like Maple Avenue, City Hall, and both areas are recognized for farm freshness, like this cafe in Hartford, Kansas.
I specialize on fresh, from scratch meals, the pies, everything. I don't like boxed food. Steaks, roast beef, chicken, tomato, everything, just everything. Just like basically farm food, well, fresh food.
Hartford, Connecticut also promotes freshness as seen by the large number of farmers markets throughout the city, helping us rank as one of America's fittest cities according to Forbes magazine.
Holidays are good. Holidays are good. Holidays are good. Holidays are good.
So when Hartford, Kansas recently celebrated its 150th anniversary, it was only proper that a letter of congratulations was sent from Hartford, Connecticut to its namesake, as both are proud of their historic past and excited about the future. Turning 375 is a defining moment in Hartford, Connecticut's history.